All right, let's jump into who's eating good. Of course, served by Applebee's. These are the players that are coming off monster weeks, and we're simply asking, can they keep it going? Amari Cooper, what more needs to be said about Amari Cooper? This was the second most fantasy points in a game this season, Jay. The problem is, on the short week now, he's got the Jets, and the Jets secondary has been very good against wide receivers this year. He could play in the slot a little bit and maybe get away from Sauce Gardner or DJ Reed, but a matchup downgrade for a guy that's been absolutely insane with Joe Flacco.
Yeah, particularly last week. Last week was just a farce. It just descended into the realm of comedy, what he was doing in that game. It was ridiculous. Now he gets a huge upgrade in terms of opponent. I mean, the Texans, they're just down so many guys on that defense, missing Will Anderson, Blake Cashman, Jimmy Ward goes down in this game too after only a few snaps. So it's going to be tougher. But at the same time, Connor, interested for your thoughts. Like, why did the Jets give up 28 points to the Commanders? Are they less imposing of a defense than they were a few weeks ago?
Yeah, they took their foot off the gas. They stopped tackling. I think that Brissett was more decisive. For as good as the Jets' defense is, they are not, the 85 Bears in a sense where you can't do anything against them, especially when they start to play with the lead. It felt like they got a little bit lackadaisical. And Lawrence, to me, Amari Cooper, I'm not saying for who's eating good, this is going to remain. But to think he can't get another 15 to 20 points in a week where you're starting him no matter what, he's not a guy that I'm thinking is, he can get through this and be fine.
He could definitely walk away from this game with 100 yards. We just saw Jalen Waddle do that to them the other week. And one thing is for certain, Joe Flacco has been, and will continue to let it rip. Just piling up games where he throws it 40-plus times each game. And Amari Cooper said it himself, and I believe him. He said can't nobody guard him. It's already tough to guard a receiver one-on-one. When you have a guy like Amari Cooper who has done this now, 200-plus receiving yards in a game for 3 teams now, he's still got that in his tank. It just takes them one big play. They could be shutting down, Cooper in the passing game for the whole game, and then it just takes one deep ball. Like we saw, this is consistent with Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper. So while I don't expect it to be another 200-yard day or even 150 yards, but we know that Joe Flacco is looking for him early and often.
Where do you rank him this week, Lawrence?
I have him at 16 this week.
Top 20 play.
If it wasn't for them playing against the New York Jets in that secondary, he would be inside my top 10 for sure.
The sneaky thing with the Browns as well is that we focus on the fact they've had 4 quarterbacks. They lost Nick Chubb. They lost all these guys on defense too. But they're also missing both of their starting tackles in Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin, and DeJuan Jones. The next guy up, he goes down as well. And this is why I think Kevin Stefanski's your coach of the year. Just this absurd amount of injuries they've dealt with. But the upshot of losing those tackles, they can't run the ball at all at the moment. And against Houston, they were able to do whatever they wanted through the air, but they just could not run the ball whatsoever. And so they have to throw. They have to take these shots deep. And Flacco is such a perfect complement for their defense because the defense is so good. And Flacco is just going to connect on some of these deep balls, and he has to throw them because they can't run it at the moment.
He's going to throw a couple of picks. But when it comes to Amari Cooper, that won't affect him in fantasy. Furthermore, they beat the Jets tomorrow night. They clinched that playoff spot, so they're definitely motivated to do that.
And they could do it at home. All right, our next player in the same game, Breece Hall. He's got the Browns on the short week at Cleveland. Breece Hall absolutely demolished Matthews' Commanders. 20 rushes, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. But what was the bonus to get him to over 43 points was the 12 catches for 96 yards. Lawrence, with Trevor Siemian under center, he has no problem checking it down to Breece over and over again. Even on games that he won't be able to get in the end zone on the ground twice, that's the value in Breece Hall.
Bruh, 16 targets for a running back. That's like some old LaDainian Tomlinson type
Marshall
stuff,
Faulk.
man. Yeah, man. Last 4 out of the last 5 games, Breece Hall has at least 8 targets. So he could run into a wall versus this Cleveland Browns defense in the running game. You could have, 12 carries for 30 yards or what have you. But like you said, and Trevor Siemian threw the ball 49 times last week, which was
tried to throw it 49 times.
Right, which was that was a bit of a shock to me. But again, 16 of those were check downs and intermediate throws to Garrett Wilson as well. So it's not like he ain't letting it rip like Flacco. So this is a good thing for Breece Hall, and even Garrett Wilson as well. I think in this particular game, I have him ranked this week as the running back 10. So it'll be tougher because it's Cleveland. But he's not going to need a touchdown to give you a double-digit fantasy day.
Yeah, I think this is also maybe one of the biggest disparities ever in NFL history between the quality of a pass defense and the quality of an opposing quarterback, particularly when you factor in the Jets' offensive line. This Cleveland pass defense is historic statistically, and Simeon is not good at the moment. And the Browns, their run defense is still good. It's still above average, but it's not the same level as their pass defense. It's the number 9 run defense in the NFL. Breece Hall clearly is no concerns about workload or health or whatever. They're just running him into the ground. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I mean, Christian McCaffrey's your number 1 running back next season in drafts. Breece Hall might be number 2.
Yeah,
and it's bizarre to say like Kyron Williams might be
I would say Kyron Williams, but Breece Hall, like, so easily top 5.
Yeah.
That's easy. The question is he the third one? Because I would go CMC and then Kyron Williams. But yeah, you know he's going to be there. You got guys like Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard with contract situations, so you know Breece is going to be there. So yeah, that's a first-round pick to me.
All right, we'll finish Keep It Open, or not Keep It Open, close that. Who's Eating Good with Gabe Davis, Gabe Davis, Jay, is kind of the king of Who's Eating Good, because when he has a good game, it's a monstrous game. The problem is it's kind of not even a coin flip. It's 1 out of every 3, 4, 5. So Gabe Davis comes off a week where he has 4 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown, but in a fantasy championship scenario, this is a boom or bust player.
Yeah, he's the definition of boom or bust. I mean, 2 of the past 3 games, he hasn't had a catch. And then he goes 4 for 130 and a touchdown. He's highly dependent on these Josh Allen Superman plays, like that long touchdown bomb that we just saw against the Chargers. And he was magnificent in that game. And either side of the catchless games, he has 130 and 105 yards. Now, I do think it's a favorable matchup against New England, because New England right now has the best run defense in the NFL and a pass defense that doesn't stack up. So I suspect the Bills will have to throw. But there's just no rhyme or reason. Any week, he's the most boom or bust player in the NFL right now, Gabe Davis. So I don't think you can trust him. If you're in a matchup where you're at a disadvantage and you need variance, then he's fantastic. Plug him in. But if you're the favorite in a championship round matchup, you probably have better options, a guy who has a higher floor.
Yeah, there would have it be the coldest day in hell if I'm in a fantasy championship and I'm starting a receiver that plays with Josh Allen, who's only had 3 100-yard games this season. When he scores a touchdown this season, he averages almost 20 fantasy points per game. That's very good. When he doesn't score a touchdown, he averages 2.4 fantasy points per game. So if you're in that fantasy championship and you're thinking to yourself, can Gabe Davis get a touchdown? If you feel like he can, you'll be okay. If you feel like he will not get a touchdown, don't do it. Please don't do it.
I think it just comes down to kind of what you hinted at, Jay. If you're in a matchup that you're down projection 25 points and you have a floor player that's projected for 10 and Gabe Davis, you got to start Gabe Davis. But the reality is, if you're in a fantasy championship, barring a miracle, you're probably projected pretty closely where Lawrence, you'd prefer to sit him.
Yeah, and again, it's like he's a boom or bust, but it's like boom, bust,
yes.
Boom. The booms be big, and when he booms, he's getting that long touchdown catch, and then you can finally breathe easy. But do you really want to sweat out 3.5 quarters? Now, it's a relief when he does it, but yeah, only if you absolutely have to. Like, you'd have to be injury riddled, and we're getting receivers. We've starting to get receivers back healthy, so hopefully you don't have to sweat that out. But if you do, you need the touchdown.
Yeah, I think it's compare him to like Deontay Johnson or something. Like, Deontay Johnson has so little ceiling with Mason Rudolph, with the fact that he just doesn't score touchdowns. The deep shots go to George Pickens. Gabe Davis, if you're the favorite, then start Deontay Johnson probably. And if you're the underdog, then you might want to start Gabe Davis.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.